Today, I want to talk about the notion of child labor because it turns out that many people misunderstand what is child labor, specifically in the fast fashion industry. Because many people think that child workers are employed by fashion brands, and that kind of thinking is wrong. But first, why don't we understand what child labor is? And to do that, I invite you to look at the ILO, International Labor Organization website, specifically the section which is dedicated to the child labor. So the ILO says that not all work done by children should be classified as child labor. Children's or adolescents' participation, and adolescents are teenagers, so it's still, considered as children. So children's participation in work that does not affect their health and personal development or interfere with their schooling is generally regarded as being something positive. This includes activities such as helping their parents around their home, assisting in a family business, or earning pocket money outside school hours and during school holidays. So then the ILO goes on to say that these activities contribute to children's development and to the welfare of their families. They provide them with skills and experience and help them to prepare them to be productive members of society during their adult life. So that is in brief what child labor is, and you can see from this definition that according to the ILO, in certain circumstances, children, when they are working, and if the circumstances are right, then children's work can be beneficial to their development. But unfortunately, this term, child labor, is often defined as work that deprives children of their childhood, their potential, their dignity, and something that is harmful to their physical and mental development. And this is what the case is often today when we talk about child labor. It's not something positive, and it's mostly associated with the work of children in developing countries rather than developed countries, because in developed countries, children are allowed to work as in developing countries, but the law, when it allows the legal definition and the legal conditions, they are met by practical situation, by facts. What I mean is that there is no discrepancy between what the law says and what the actual practice of employment of children is. And that is completely opposite when it comes to children in developing countries. That being said, I will add to this that in developed countries, children, when they are working, they can, be found working as, during their leisure time, during summer holidays, during, winter holidays, whatever, spring break, etc. And, it's usually something that is positive in their development. It's a side work that can help them to improve, improve both in terms of their personal development and educational school development. However, the situation in developing countries is completely opposite, and we're going to see why and how in the example of children working in the specifically fast fashion industry. Coming back to the question of what the child labor is according to the ILO, when it's understood as being harmful, as being something negative to the development of kids, the term child labor refers in that case to work that is mentally, physically, socially, or morally dangerous and harmful to children, and interferes with their schooling by depriving them of the opportunity to attend school, obliging them to leave school prematurely, or requiring them to combine the school attendance with the work that they have been doing at the time. So far, we have looked at the definition of what the notion of child labor is in general. Then we have understood that there is also an understanding of child labor as being perceived as a negative, phenomenon rather than a positive phenomenon. So there is child labor that is positive and there's child labor that is negative. Now, that is as a negative understanding phenomenon. Now, let's talk about the third type, which is the worst forms of child labor. And still, according to the ILO, we will not go as far as referring to other sources because the ILO definition is quite sophisticated and it's very enriching, and it will give you the full picture if you just look at the definition provided by the ILO. So, according to the ILO, the worst forms of child labor involves children being enslaved, separated from their families, exposed to serious hazards and illnesses, and or left to fend for themselves on the streets of large cities, often at a very early age. Having said that, may I just recall the movie Lion or Slumdog Millionaire, both of the movies that have, that depict main characters of the movies, kids. Too, they actually show you the life of kids, how it is frustrating in developing countries, notably India. So that's what it means when children, they are left alone to wonder and to, basically to make make themselves an earning living. And the ILO goes on to say that whether or not particular forms of work can be called child labor depends on the child's age, the type and hour of work performed, the conditions under which it is performed, and the objectives pursued by individual countries. The answer, of course, varies from country to country as well as among sectors within the countries. Just one more information that I would like to add to give you more, details about what can be understood as the worst forms of child labor. For example, if children are forced to work in unfriendly circumstances for children, work environment, let's just say, for example, they have to be in the surrounding of adults. They have to work in warehouses. They have to, carry a lot of, let's say, textile from the place storehouse to the factory, and they have to, they have to finish, let's say, so many pieces per hour, pieces of clothing per hour, and they are stressed and they are being told off, they're being verbally abused, and there could also be cases when children could be receiving some, abuse of verbal sexual context. It depends on the circumstances, right? So someone could probably say, listen, it's better to work under sewing machines than, in brothels, in, adult houses, if you know what I mean. It's totally fine for kids to work in garment factories. Yes and no, but I'm more inclined towards saying that children are not supposed to work in places like garment factories, whatever, because the very fact that you're making these children to work with these machines, and in circumstances where they get pennies, and it's already the supply chains of fashion brands, they are already unfriendly towards adults, and how can they be friendly towards kids? It's completely two different worlds we're talking about. So that's why when I say that the work of children in the fast fashion industry, in its supply chains, can be classified as the worst form of child labor, I couldn't be wrong, because there are facts and circumstances can really let you know that this is really the case. So what are the causes of child labor? The first is the poverty, both in the country and in their families. And poverty is certainly the greatest single force driving children into the workplace. So, income from child's work is felt to be crucial for his her own survival or for that of their household. So, yes, first and foremost is it's poverty, both on the level of family or the country. And the second reason is families. Even if your families are well off, they do not need, side works, side hustling of children to survive for the entire household. They can be the reason why children could be working in that family, because it's like everybody needs to contribute to that family's finances, and that you as a child, you are not an exception. So clearly the second reason could be just family of that kid, whether the family is well off or whether the family is poor. The third reason can be cultures, societal values and understandings about the role of the child, and that every child has to, follow the footsteps of their parents, and that they have to help, or that they have to help. I would like to correct myself. That as long as the kid already is stable enough, I mean mentally and physically, and he can move his fingers, let's say, just figuratively, then that the child has to work. And there is no understanding that in those kinds of societies that kids needs to really go to school, that going to school does not mean they are deprived of additional income. And another reason for child labor is the very fact that there are weak national educational systems and child protection services. So clearly, in countries where child labor levels are high, you will really see that in these countries, educational systems are very weak, and child protection services just do not do their job. Probably because they are overpopulated, but then that's not an excuse. And the second one is that it's just bureaucracy type of corruption type of thing going on in these countries, where they just wouldn't move a finger when they would have to, regarding surveillance of kids, and to see the real reason why these children have to go to work, because there's really clearly either an absence of school close by, or that the parents do not want these kids to go to school, because they think that they have to go to work and provide for the family. And in these circumstances, the ideal solution would be to help these families, but then we are talking about financially. But then we are talking about social security systems, which often are lack enforcement, and which often are most often than not non-existent in countries where like child labor rates are high. Yes, it's true that children are abducted, or that some kind of adults that are not related to the family, they take advantage of the vulnerability of not only the kid but their families in terms of finances, and they trick the parents into thinking that these kids can be better off working for them, and then they end up paying or not paying at all to these kids. If they're paying, then they're paying pennies. So these kinds of situations, of course, they happen, but the number one reason is that it comes from the family. If the family does not protect their own kids, then, and the family does not see that children will need to really go to school, whether the school is bad or good, then there's no way out. There's no way out of this child labor situation. I'm not pioneering for making these kids study until they are 18, 17. But why don't we introduce a system? Why don't we force these kids' families into making sure that their kids will be going to school nonstop until eighth, ninth grade inclusively? I think that that would be at least the minimum, sufficiency that we could achieve, and that could be helpful both for the child and for the society. And so, speaking of society, what is happening is that, and that's what the ILO says. Once these kids, after working for these so many years, they stop, they turn to adults, they enter the adult employment market. It turns out that their situation, both financial and personal, in terms of personal growth and development, doesn't change at all, even if they reach adulthood and they step into, the next level of adulthood, let's say 20 something, 25, 30, etc. So that means that clearly child labor doesn't help. It's a temporary thing to relieve the difficulties of the family, and to just get by, but it will actually fire backwards. It will be drastic in terms of the development, both for the family and for the society. Triple, I would say, for the child, the adult, aka the family, and the society. Because when they will enter the employment market, adult employment market, they will, and that's what the ILO saying, as I said to you, they will not be capable to respond to meet the conditions, the requirements of the current, employment market, because they will not be capable, because they have not, most people, there are many people who cannot write and read, and that's because, their childhood was messed up. So in the introduction of this video, I told you that it turns out that many people think that child workers are employed by fashion brands. And this understanding I found out from the reactions to my TikTok video that I made this week, where people were saying that, come on, okay, the child labor exists, but you are saying that, fashion brands, they do not hire kids, and you are denying kind of the responsibility of the letter of brands. Once again, neither brands nor their partner factories hire kids, except that factories can hire teenagers according to what is allowed in international and national law. That is, fine. They have to respect, conditions of the law, etc. And if they do, then they can hire teenagers. If brands do not hire these kids, then where do these kids working in the fast fashion industry, production places, they come from? Who hires them is what is the question of the day. Absolutely, child labor exists in the fashion industry, and we cannot deny that. But this is because children work for informal businesses, subcontractors of subcontractors, or unlicensed small businesses or sweatshop type, undercover places. Do fashion brands have responsibility in the question of child labor? Yes, they do, but that responsibility is something that needs to be weighed against the responsibility of supply chains of fashion brands. Let me make a recap of what I said. Child labor exists in the fashion industry, and it's absolute. However, when it comes to the responsibility of brands, fashion brands, there is no direct link, and there is clearly kind of a shaky indirect link. Yes, they're responsible, but they're not responsible directly, because they didn't hire them, and if they didn't hire them, they are not employers. Of course, there is a question of corporate social responsibility, and the question of surveillance and making these controls, not controls, making these visits to survey if the factory that they're working with, they have they do their work accordingly, that they do not hire children. But then, as I said, tier one type factories, meaning partner factories of garment brands, fashion brands, they don't really hire these kids. They can hire, as I said, teenagers here and there, and they might have like one or two cases, um, as an example, right? Don't take it literally. It could be five, could be one case of, seeing kids as early as 5, 8 years old, next to their mom or dad. Usually it's mom, in big factories, but that is an exception, and that cannot be generalized when it comes to tier one factories. And you know we have to understand also the human relations, because supposedly, let's say that I am uh, the owner, the manager, I'm the administrator of human resource manager, and I have this person next to me, the garment worker, or the relative of this garment worker that I know, and she works fine, and or he works fine, and they say like, okay, I have this niece or nephew of mine, the family is really struggling, and I come from that situation, from their country, and I'm like, I really know the struggles because I might have gone through the same path, and I might have been employed as a child worker, but then I cannot. But then at the same time, I'm the administrator, human resources manager in that factory. I know the rules of the law. I know, excuse me, my responsibility as someone who needs to not hire kids. But then when I see like someone like 10, 11, 12 years old, and who could sew buttons or something, and then, at least help the family not to, have a famine situation, probably it will be wise to say that, that was a humane act to hire this kid. There's nothing wrong with that. And, you know, that's these are kind of exceptional situations, and if that happens in a tier one type factory, you know so be it. Do not make a big deal out of it. Just that, the problem is when you will see in a factory where there will be, lots of kids. I won't say 100%, but I don't know, maybe 5 to 20% kids working in there, and that the factory has hired them specifically because the labor is cheap and stuff, but not one or two, five cases exceptionally. So yeah, that's what I wanted to tell you, that there is an issue when it comes to child labor in the fast fashion industry supply chains, not specifically in tier one supply chains, in tier two, tier three, tier two slash subcontractor of subcontractor type of situation. But then again, we cannot really say that if a tier one factory hires workers, excuse me, hires, um, concludes a contract with a smaller factory, which is its subcontractor now, and that subcontractor, hires another one, which is smaller, and then we end up finding out a few cases of child labor in that third one, then I don't think that third one is it's supply chain of the fashion brand. So clearly, yeah, the situation is complicated. It's like a labyrinth, and it's a circle of circumstances that involves lots of actors. And in between, there are, I'm sure, people that get shaky and sleazy, and they take advantage of the situation, and they instead of within the same factories, instead of doing business with righteous, with just factories, they go about making deals with unlicensed sweatshops, etc. So these kind of things happen. Thank you for watching if you stayed until the end, and for videos on fast fashion and matters of sustainable development, not just fast fashion, but fashion in general, where I discuss on here on my channel on YouTube issues that are related to labor rights and working conditions of workers in this industry. I will upload videos by 10 a.m. CT Sundays. So yeah, thank you for watching. Take care and see you next time. Bye.